My husband stole the money I saved for fertility treatment and gave it to his sister who always hated me. Then she yelled at me, "You'll never be a mother anyway." A week later, a stranger showed up at our door with a shocking confession. My name is Selena. I'm 38 and live in Asheville, North Carolina. Derek and I had been married for almost 7 years. We met at a friend's cookout in Charlotte. He made me laugh, talked about growing vegetables, and didn't mind that I couldn't eat gluten. Honestly? He felt like safety. Stability. I dated chaos before. Derek seemed different. Solid. Quiet in a way that felt calming, not cold. I've always wanted to be a mother. Always. I used to work with kids as a speech pathologist in the school system, and every time a little one clung to my leg or asked if I had children of my own, it hit me like a soft punch to the heart. We started trying in our early 30s. After 2 years of nothing, my OB referred me to a fertility specialist in Charlotte. The diagnosis wasn't exactly shocking. I had diminished ovarian reserve. Translation: fewer eggs, and time wasn't on my side. Still, I held on to hope. I'm nothing if not stubborn. IVF was expensive, but I was ready to fight for it. I opened a high-yield savings account and started pouring every spare dollar in. Birthday gifts? Into the account. Extra hours at work? Into the account. I sold my vintage guitar and my old car. Even when Derek's business slowed down, I never touched that money. That was the fund. That was the future. And I thought Derek respected that. When I finally hit $14,000, I was ecstatic. I cried in the Target parking lot, sitting in my car clutching a drive-thru coffee like it was a trophy. I remember texting Derek with shaking fingers, "We're ready. It's happening. I made it." He didn't answer for 2 hours. When he did, it was just, "That's great, babe." Not the fireworks I imagined. But he was always a quiet guy. I told myself not to read into it. A few days later, I went to log into the account to make the first payment to the clinic. And I saw it. $0. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe I was looking at the wrong account? I checked again. I refreshed. Still 0. My hand started shaking. I called the bank, holding back tears as I waited on hold. And then I heard the words that changed everything. The funds were transferred via linked account to another user. Linked account. That meant Derek. I don't remember hanging up. I just remember sitting on the couch, staring at the blank screen of the TV, trying to breathe. My chest felt like it had collapsed in on itself. I wanted it to be a mistake. I needed it to be a mistake. But deep down, I already knew. When he got home, I didn't yell. I didn't even cry. I asked him, quiet, shaking, too scared to know but unable to stop myself, if he'd taken the money. He blinked. Looked away. Said, "Selena, listen." It was just sitting there. Myra needed it. Myra. If you've never met someone who actively hates your existence, count yourself lucky. Myra is, how do I even describe her? 4 years older than Derek. Lives about an hour away in Winston-Salem. Her entire personality revolves around being the victim of everyone else's incompetence. She's gone through jobs like socks, always quitting because the boss was an idiot. She calls me Sweet C in the most condescending tone possible. And she's never once missed an opportunity to remind Derek that I'm too soft or not really one of us. So yeah. That Myra. He gave her my IVF money. When I asked why she needed it so urgently, he muttered something about debts and legal trouble, but nothing concrete. Just a lot of shrugging and avoidance. The worst part? He didn't even apologize. Not really. It was like he genuinely thought this would blow over. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of man I had married. Wondering if I'd ignored signs along the way because I was so damn focused on building a future, I didn't notice he wasn't building it with me. The next morning, I got in my car and drove to Winston-Salem. Myra answered the door with her usual fake smile and said, "Oh, look who's here. The fertility queen." I told her I knew what she did. That I wanted the money back. That it was mine. She laughed. Laughed. "Ah, come on," she said, twirling her hair. "You weren't gonna get pregnant anyway. Waste of money." Then she looked me straight in the eye and said it. "You'll never be a mother anyway." I don't remember walking back to my car. I do remember sitting in the driver's seat, hands clenched so tight around the wheel my knuckles turned white. I couldn't drive. I couldn't think. I just sat there, trembling with rage and heartbreak, staring at the door she'd slammed in my face. I didn't go home that night. I called my cousin Ava and drove to Brevard. I needed space. I needed air. Ava's place is surrounded by forest, tall pines and silence. I sat on her back porch with a glass of wine, staring into the trees, trying to figure out how everything in my life had come undone in 72 hours. Derek texted me once. "Come home. We can talk." I didn't respond. I stayed at Ava's for 3 days. She didn't ask questions. Just let me be. And then, on the 4th morning, I went back to Asheville to get some papers I needed for work. That's when it happened. A knock on the door. It was soft, hesitant. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked out the window and saw a young man, maybe late 20s, standing there, holding something in his hand. An envelope. I opened the door just a crack. "Yes? Are you Selena Merrick?" he asked. I nodded. "My name is Jonah. I think you need to know something about Myra." And everything I thought I knew exploded. I stepped outside, still holding the door half closed behind me, unsure if this was a setup. I'd never seen this guy before, short hair, hoodie, nervous eyes, but something about him didn't feel threatening. Just off. Like he wasn't supposed to be here either. He handed me the envelope. "I don't want anything from you," he said quickly, like he'd rehearsed the line 100 times. "I just thought you should know the truth." I glanced down at the thick envelope in my hands. It was already open, as if he'd flipped through everything inside a dozen times before deciding to bring it here. I looked back up at him, confused. "She's my mother," he said. My brain stalled. "Who is?" "Myra." I blinked. "That's not possible. Myra doesn't have kids." He let out a dry laugh. "That's what she tells people." Then, more softly, "She gave me up when she was 17. I was adopted by a couple in Greensboro. I started searching for her last year. DNA sites, old records, everything. Finally found her address 3 weeks ago." He paused, like he was waiting for me to tell him to leave. But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen. "She didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat," he continued. "But I figured. I don't know, maybe we could talk. I just wanted to know where I came from. I didn't want money. I wasn't trying to guilt her into anything." He rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. "She was cold. Kept calling me a ghost from the past and stuff like that. But then she asked if I had savings. Said she was dealing with some legal mess and needed help." He looked me in the eyes then. I said no. Told her I barely had enough to cover rent. I thought that was the end of it. Jonah took a shaky breath. "Then last night, I was at her place. She didn't know I was still in the hallway. She was on the phone with someone, talking about how she milked the IVF freak dry and how it was so easy with Derek being spineless." I flinched. Not just at the words, but at how casually he said them. Like Myra had just spoken them like facts. Like that's how she saw me. "I recorded part of it," Jonah added. "She hung up before I could get much. But the way she laughed, it didn't sit right with me. So I went through some of her stuff. Found emails. Screenshots. Even a voice memo she'd saved bragging about it. My hand gripped the envelope tighter. I didn't know what to do, he said. I mean, this woman, my biological mother, just scammed someone out of their chance to be a parent. And laughed about it. I couldn't stay quiet. I opened the envelope with shaky fingers. Inside were printed screenshots, emails, a flash drive, and a handwritten note at the top. She said she was going to delete all of this. I made copies first. Thought you might want them. I invited him inside. Not because I trusted him yet, but because the truth was unraveling too fast to process alone. We sat at the dining table, me on one end, Jonah across from me, glancing around like he was in a museum of someone else's life. I scanned through the pages. There it was, in black and white, Myra emailing a friend about hustling the IVF chick. Her telling Derek she needed the full $14K to keep her out of the system. Her banking info showing deposits matching the exact dates my account was drained. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just kept reading, numb and slow, like I'd been drugged. Like maybe this wasn't real life and I'd wake up soon with the money still there, the clinic still calling, my marriage still intact. But none of that was going to happen. She used both of us, Jonah said quietly. I mean, you more than me, obviously. But still. I looked up at him. Why didn't you go to the police? He shrugged. I didn't know what was legal. Or if she'd turn it around and say I was hiring her. I don't have family to back me up. You seemed like the one person who deserved to know the whole thing. I nodded slowly, then leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above us. Thank you, I said, voice barely a whisper. He nodded, stood up. I'll go. I didn't come to dump this on you. Just wanted you to have it. Wait, I said. Please. Just stay a second. He hesitated, then sat back down. Do you think she's done this before? I asked. Jonah exhaled. From the way she talked about it? Yeah. She said something about squeezing the church lady last year and how she's got the system figured out. Like she's proud of it. I sat with that for a while. This wasn't just about my money. It was about a woman who had weaponized cruelty and manipulation, and a husband who had handed her the keys without even asking what the price would be. Jonah stayed for about an hour. We didn't talk much after that. He told me he was heading back to Greensboro soon. I gave him my number, told him to call if he needed anything. He looked surprised. I think maybe he didn't expect me to care. But somehow, we were two different branches of the same disaster. And I felt connected to him in a strange, bitter way. After he left, I sat on the porch swing for a long time. Same place I'd sat the night Derek confessed. But this time I wasn't crying. This time I was planning. The moment Derek walked through the front door that evening, I knew it was over. All of it. The marriage. The lies. The future I thought I was building. He looked tired. Stressed. He kissed my cheek out of habit, not affection, and said, I grabbed groceries. I waited until he set them down. Then I placed the envelope on the kitchen table. He looked at it. Then at me. What's this? I said nothing. Just watched. He opened the flap and pulled out the first few pages. The color drained from his face. He flipped to the next page. And the next. By the time he got to the flash drive, his hands were trembling. Where did you get this? He whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He sank into a chair. Covered his face with both hands. I stood across from him, arms crossed, heart finally slowing down. Why? I asked. He didn't say anything. Just sat there, hunched and cornered, like a man finally realizing the cage he'd helped build was closing in on him. I could feel it in my bones, the beginning of the end. But this wasn't the ending yet. Not even close. Derek didn't speak for a long time. Not a word. The silence stretched between us, heavy and sharp like a wire pulled too tight. He was staring down at the pages like maybe, if he focused hard enough, they'd vanish. But they didn't. They just sat there. Tangible evidence of the worst mistake he'd ever made, and the worst mistake I ever married. I waited. Finally, he said it. Voice low, cracked. I didn't know she was lying. I let out a laugh. Not a kind one. She's been lying since the day I met her, I said. You knew what kind of person she was. You just didn't care. He shook his head like a kid being scolded. I thought she was in trouble. I thought she was finally telling the truth. She said it was legal fees, if she didn't pay them, she'd lose her apartment. You gave away our future, Derek, I said, keeping my voice even. Not just money. Everything. He looked up at me then, and for the first time in years, I saw fear on his face. Real fear. The kind that comes when someone finally understands the gravity of what they've done. I was going to tell you, he muttered. When? After she sent me a postcard from Aruba? He looked down again. I couldn't cry. I think I'd run out of tears. What was left was this cold, solid sense of clarity. Like my brain had finally caught up with everything my heart refused to see. This man, this person I built a life with, had chosen her. Chosen her manipulation. Her lies. Her drama. Over me. Over us. I didn't even need Jonah's evidence to know what had happened. But having it made everything real in a way I couldn't ignore. You know, she said I'd never be a mother? I asked him, quieter now. That I was wasting money on something I'd never get? His eyes flickered. Guilt. Embarrassment. Maybe even shame. But it was too late. I didn't know she said that. I stepped closer. And if she had? Would you have done anything different? He didn't answer. There it was. I left him there with the envelope and walked out to the porch. The late afternoon sun was slanting through the trees, golden and soft, making the world look more peaceful than I felt. Maple lay by the stairs, head resting on her paws. She wagged her tail once when I sat down next to her. In the silence, I could hear the distant hum of a lawnmower. A car passing. The neighbor's wind chimes. My heartbeat, steady now. A part of me was screaming to get in the car and go. Just leave. Drive until the road ran out. But another part of me, quieter, more focused, was already working through the next steps. I didn't want revenge. I wanted resolution. I wanted to be free. The next morning, I called Ava and told her everything. She was silent at first. Then she asked, "Do you want me to help you pack or help you file?" "Both," I said. That same afternoon, I called an attorney in Asheville, a woman named Terry Holden, who came highly recommended by a friend who'd gone through a nasty separation. Her assistant booked me for a consultation 2 days later. I told Derek I was filing for divorce the night before. We were sitting at opposite ends of the living room. Him on the couch. Me in the armchair. Maple between us on the rug, her ears twitching. He didn't argue. Didn't beg. Didn't even try to spin it. He just nodded and said, "I figured." I don't know what hurt more, the betrayal, or how little fight he had left in him. Like he'd already resigned himself to losing me the minute he signed that transfer. I took the guest room that night. Didn't sleep much. Just stared at the ceiling, wondering how long I'd been blind to who he really was. The next few days blurred together. I gathered documents, checked bank accounts, started untangling everything with the calm numbness of someone performing surgery on themselves. Terry was sharp. No nonsense. I liked her instantly. "He stole marital funds without your consent," she said, flipping through the folder of evidence I gave her. "That's financial misconduct. We can build a case around this. You'll be in a strong position. What about pressing charges?" I asked. She looked up. Do you want to? I don't want her to get away with it. Terry nodded slowly. She may have committed fraud. Especially if she misrepresented what the money was for. Let me connect with a colleague at the DA's office. We'll see what we can do. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Powerful. Meanwhile, Jonah kept in touch. We texted a few times a week. Nothing heavy. Just check-ins, bits of conversation. He told me he was looking into counseling. That he wasn't sure if he'd ever confront Myra again, but he was glad he knew the truth now. I used to imagine what she was like, he texted one night. Turns out I gave her way too much credit. Same, I wrote back. I wasn't sure why I stayed in contact with him. Maybe because he was the only person who'd walked into this mess without an agenda. Maybe because he reminded me that not everything born from lies has to stay broken. Derek moved out 2 weeks after I filed. Quietly, with no fight. Just packed a few duffel bags and left the house keys on the counter. I didn't say goodbye. He didn't either. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and that was that. It should have felt like grief. But it felt like relief. I spent the rest of the week cleaning, like, really cleaning. Closet purges. Wall scrubbing. I even repainted the guest room a pale sage color that felt like a reset. Ava came over one night and helped me hang new curtains. Feels like a different house, she said. It was. It was mine again. But the story wasn't over yet. Because just when I thought Myra was done taking from me, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. The woman on the line introduced herself as Detective Reeves with the Winston-Salem Police Department. She asked if I could come in for a statement. Apparently, Myra had done this before. And someone else had just filed a report. Detective Reeves sounded tired, like someone who'd been pulling threads for months hoping the whole thing would unravel. And now, finally, it was starting to. She's been under the radar for a while, she said. But with what you've given us, and the new report, we think we have enough to move forward. I agreed to drive to Winston-Salem the next day. I didn't sleep much that night, mostly ran through what I'd say, over and over again. I thought I'd be nervous. But by morning, there was only this strange, sharp calm, like the kind you get before a storm you're not scared of anymore. At the station, I sat with Detective Reeves for almost 2 hours. I gave her the full story, handed over the copies Jonah had brought me, the recordings, everything. She listened carefully, occasionally nodding, occasionally scribbling in her notes. When I mentioned Jonah, her eyes lit up. He's the one who filed the second report. I blinked. He did? He brought in more evidence. Banking details. Messages. Apparently, she used his name on some fake loan applications, too. Myra wasn't just a manipulator. She was reckless. And now, the walls were finally closing in. Reese explained they were filing charges for fraud, identity theft, and misappropriation of funds. If convicted, Myra could face real consequences, not just a slap on the wrist or a fine. There would be court. A record. And, finally, accountability. I walked out of the station that day with something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. Not because it was over, because it wasn't. But because I knew now that this story wouldn't end with her smirking behind a locked door, untouched. No, she'd finally feel the weight of what she'd done. And she'd do it knowing I was the one who helped put her there. In the weeks that followed, things moved fast. Myra was served a court summons, and suddenly the same woman who'd called me IVF girl and laughed in my face was calling Derek in a panic, begging him to make it stop. He called me once. I didn't answer. Then he emailed. Subject: can we talk? I deleted it. Whatever guilt he carried wasn't mine to fix anymore. Meanwhile, I kept moving forward. Terry worked out a divorce settlement that gave me sole ownership of the house and a formal restitution agreement. It wouldn't get the IVF money back immediately, but legally, Derek was responsible for half of what was stolen. If he didn't pay, wage garnishment would kick in. I also went back to the fertility clinic. I didn't have enough for IVF again, not yet, but I sat down with a new doctor, one who didn't rush me or make me feel like a statistic. She gave me a plan. A timeline. A path. And that was enough for now. Then came the day of Myra's hearing. It wasn't a full trial, just the first formal appearance in front of a judge. But I showed up. Sat in the back of the courtroom in a navy dress, hands folded in my lap, face calm. Jonah sat beside me. We didn't speak much, just exchanged a glance when Myra walked in. She looked different. Not broken. But exposed. No audience. No smirk. She avoided eye contact. The judge read the charges aloud: fraud, theft, impersonation. The restitution numbers were high. Her legal aid attorney stammered through a statement about her difficult background and recent emotional strain. But none of that could explain away what she'd done to me. Or to Jonah. Or to the others she'd scammed. When the judge asked if any victims wanted to speak, I stood. The courtroom quieted. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just said, she took something from me I may never get back. And she laughed about it. She made my husband choose her over the life we were building. And she didn't stop until she got caught. Then I sat down. I didn't need to say more. The truth had already done its job. That day was the beginning of the end for Myra's schemes. She took a plea deal. Got probation, community service, and court-mandated therapy, along with a black mark on her record that followed her everywhere she went. She had to pay restitution, not just to me, but to 2 other people who came forward after seeing her name in the court bulletin. She lost her Lexus. Had her accounts frozen. And when I last checked, she'd moved in with a friend somewhere outside Durham. No job. No more tricks. As for Derek? He sent one more letter, handwritten, full of apologies, begging for a second chance. It arrived 3 days after our divorce was finalized. I tore it in half and tossed it in the recycling bin. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. A few months later, I reopened the IVF fund account. Same bank. New number. I started over, $500 at a time. No shared access. Just mine. And then one day, Jonah called. I know it's weird, he said, but I got a small settlement from another thing Myra pulled a few years ago. I don't really need it all. I wanted to give you something. For the fund. I started to protest. He interrupted. It's not charity. It's me doing something good with a bad story. He sent me $1,200. I cried when I saw the deposit. Not because of the money, but because someone who was used, abandoned, and lied to still had enough in him to be kind. So here's the part where people expect me to say I met someone new. Or that I magically got pregnant. Or that I found some picture-perfect resolution tied with a bow. That's not how life works. But here's what I did get: I got my house back. I got my power back. I got proof that when people show you who they are, you should believe them the first time. I got rid of a man who never really showed up for me. And I helped stop a woman who thought hurting others was just a game she'd always win. That, to me, is the best kind of ending there is. Because it's real. Because I earned it. Because I didn't lose myself, even when they tried to take everything. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most important thing I'll ever fight for.